I showed up to the rehearsal dinner still smelling faintly of hospital bleach, the kind that clings to your sleeves no matter how many times you rinse. Houston heat sat on the parking lot like a stubborn dog, and the glass front of King's Smokehouse threw back a reflection. I barely recognized me in my night shift sneakers, hair twisted up with a drugstore clip, and that old blue thermos tucked under my arm like it was part of my body. I told myself I'd just slip in quietly, hug my son, and keep to the edge of the room until the toasts were over. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and sugar. Brisket perfume wrapped itself around the long tables, all gleaming mason jars and linen runners Candace had picked to look elevated rustic. Somebody's uncle was telling a story loud enough to carry over the clatter of silverware. I found Evan by the bar, hands in his pockets, tie just slightly crooked the way he's been crooked since he learned to walk. He looked so handsome it made my chest hurt. He kissed my cheek and said he was glad I came, and for a minute I let myself believe that would be the whole evening, simple, warm, survivable. Then Candace floated over in heels that clicked like little gavel taps. She looked like a magazine-spread cream silk dress, hair the color of expensive wheat, smile you can't quite get a handhold on. She hugged me, air-kissed to nowhere, and said, "We're so happy you could make it, Lori." The "we" hovered between us like helium. Then she turned to the bridesmaids and, with a laugh I'd never heard outside a boutique fitting room, said, "We just have to put up with this look tonight, don't we?" A few of them tittered into their flutes. I felt the words land soft, then sharp. The blue thermos was suddenly heavy, and I squeezed it until the dent under my thumb matched the old one on its side. Someone at the next table sniffed and asked if they were still cleaning the pit room. The joke traveled faster than I could. I know how I look after a shift. Shirt a little tired, hands nicked from wrestling carts and hampers, cuticles stained with the work of other people's emergencies. I don't apologize for any of it, but it still burned. Evan shifted closer. "It's just nerves," he whispered, like nerves could shape words that cleanly. His eyes were soft, pleading, stuck in that polite place where sons get caught when the room wants them to choose. I could have let him stay there. I've let him stay there a lot of years. Instead, I took a breath and unscrewed the thermos lid. That small click traveled through me like a promise. The coffee was still hot. I took a sip and let it lay a warm hand on the inside of my chest. "Congratulations," I told Candace. "Everything is beautiful." She looked relieved, then startled, like she'd expected me to spill something on her dress. She launched into a speech about tomorrow's seating chart, the videographer, how the photographer had a no uniforms in the pictures policy because it disrupted the palette. She said it so quickly she didn't notice she'd used the word uniforms for me, and not for the men in aprons working the smoker. That's all right. Some people name things by where they stand, and she stands with the camera. I drifted toward the wall, where the family photos were arranged, Evan with a missing front tooth, Evan in a high school jersey, Evan in a graduation cap. There wasn't a single picture of his father on that wall. The hurt of that is a kind of weather I've learned to walk in. When you lose a man like mine to a bad ladder in a corner he couldn't see, you learn to keep your balance on cheaper shoes. The owner's office door cracked, and Marcus, my husband's older brother, and the closest thing to a stubborn oak this place has stepped out. He doesn't do float. He trudges, chin down, hands big enough to look at home on a smoker lid. He caught my eye and did that little chin tilt he and his brother used when they needed help lifting something too heavy to ask for help with. I followed him through the hallway that smells like molasses and metal and waited while he closed us into the pit room, where the air is always a little more honest. "I didn't expect you to come tonight," he said, "after last month." "I keep my promises," I said, "and I do. It's why I still carry the same thermos I bought the week the hospital gave me a second shift to pay for the roof." He looked at my hands, not my shirt. "That's a thing the men in my life do when they've been raised by real work. You still got that spreadsheet you sent? The one about supplier rotations and pay on scan?" I felt the room tilt, just a degree. "I do." He rubbed the back of his neck, smoke settling in his hair like old secrets. "I read it twice. The numbers make sense, but Greg says it's overstepping." "Greg's the CFO," I said. "His job is to mind the cash. My job is to mind what's real." Marcus stared at me for a long second, then nodded in that slow way he nods when he's moved a heavy thing from one idea to another. He opened the door, letting in the sugar and noise and light. "Come find me after the toasts," he said under his breath. "I've got questions I don't trust to ask in front of people." "Have replaced?" I stepped back into the warmth of the dining room. Candace was arranging her friends like cutlery. Evan was letting himself be arranged. A brisket knife flashed and clinked against a platter. I took another sip from the thermos and felt the heat bloom again. When Marcus brushed past me a few minutes later, he didn't look at my shirt or my shoes. He leaned in like we were sharing an old family recipe and said, very softly, "Where did you learn that supplier model you emailed me?" Night shift starts before the city remembers to get quiet. By 9, the hospital's laundry bay is already humming, belts whirring, carts squealing, dryers coughing heat like little iron suns. I clock in, clip my badge, and stack the day's chaos into neat rolling towers. Blood and iodine have their own moods. They teach you patience, and also how to tell the truth without saying much. People think laundry is mindless. It isn't. It's triage with warmer hands. Towels are easy bulk, catch, fold. The surgical gowns are the sermons, inspect, treat, confirm. I'm good at it because accuracy comforts me. Numbers do too. When the machines settle into their rhythm, I set my blue thermos on the sorting table, unscrew the lid, and take a sip. The click of that lid is a metronome for my better self. Breathe, keep steady, don't race the noise. I wasn't always this way about numbers. 10 years ago, I started with a community class called Accounting for Non-Accountants. I sat in the back and asked questions the teacher called practical, because what I really wanted to know was how to make sense of the kind of paper life hands women like me. After that class, it was YouTube at midnight, secondhand textbooks with cracked spines, and a stack of legal pads so high. Pastor Ruth once joked I was building a staircase to a quieter heaven. Freddie came later. He used to be a patient, a line cook who'd burned both wrists in a fryer accident. He'd shuffle into our bay with the soft steps of someone who'd learned Payne's timetable. Turned out he was a numbers man who'd made a wrong turn at 20 and a right one at 35. He helped small businesses figure out why their wallets always felt thinner than their pockets. We became friends over coffee, and then he became the person who taught me how to read a balance sheet like a map, not a curse. He's the one who said, "Debt is a story someone got stuck in. If you can read the grammar, you can help them rewrite the ending." I didn't believe that at first. But one winter, when King's Smokehouse was juggling suppliers like hot coals, I ran my own little study days payable outstanding, vendor concentration, the cost of their loyalty. It was just a spreadsheet I built between wash cycles. I showed it to Freddie, half embarrassed. He whistled low and said, "You see it. Pay on scan for the big box account, staggered terms with the local meat guy, and stop buying sauce in 12-ounce bottles like it's perfume." I don't save companies. I do laundry. Still, that spreadsheet made its way to Marcus's desk, and 2 months later, one supplier got paid on delivery, another on scan, and a third was swapped out for a family outfit that priced fair because they liked eating what they sold. The cooks kept their hours. The dishwashers breathed easier. Sometimes help is a wrench turned in a quiet corner. The machine keeps running, and no one asks who tightened the bolt. That's how I think of the church, too. It's a toolbox, not a spotlight. Pastor Ruth is a small woman with a big collection of index cards. On mine, she wrote, "Calm, collect, confirm. When they bait you," she said, "you don't bite, you name. When they fog you, you document. When they rush you, you ask for things in writing." I carry that card inside my phone case, like a backup prayer. Evan doesn't like conflict. He's a good man, just allergic to the sound of a room dividing. He'll say, "Mom, let's not make this a thing," with that pleading softness that tries to build a fence out of air. I love him for it, and I forgive him for it, and I've decided not to let his discomfort become my leash. Love without a spine is just a favor someone can revoke. Around midnight, as the dryers sighed and the bay warmed into the kind of heat that makes your shoulders loosen, I wiped the old scuff on my thermos with a rag. The dent is from the week my husband died. I dropped the thing on a sidewalk and caught it with my knee, but it's still bruised. I keep the dent. I don't fix it because it reminds me what was carried and what can be. I was logging the last delivery totals when my phone buzzed. A new email blinked onto the screen with a subject line that tried to sound professional and came out like a shove. From Gregory Talley, CFO, King's Smokehouse. Subject: Unsolicited input. The preview showed the first sentence before I even tapped it. "We don't need your interventions, Miss King." Candace called it a planning session. It felt like a presentation I hadn't been invited to join. She set out a stack of glossy pages on the restaurant office desk, fonts, color palettes, photos of strangers laughing in perfect light. "The brand of the day," she said, as if a wedding could be trademarked. Each page had rules: soft creams, a touch of sage, no harsh lines, no visible labels, no clutter, no chaos. "We're going for elevated rustic," she explained, which, as far as I could tell, meant we would spend money to make the place look humble on purpose. She walked me through the seating chart as if I were a new host on her payroll. "You'll be at table 9 with the church ladies," she said, tapping a rectangle near the kitchen door. I recognized those women sweet to my face, quick with weather and recipes, quicker with stories about anyone who didn't show. "It's quieter there," Candace added, which we both knew wasn't true. "Better for you." I nodded once. The page made a soft sound under her manicured nail. Evan stood behind her chair, hands stuffed in his pockets like he was hiding them from the conversation. "It's just logistics," he said. "The photographer has a flow." That word flow has done so much work for cowards, I sometimes think it should draw a salary. I looked at my son and saw a good man trying to be a bridge by lying that there wasn't a river. "Also," Candace went on, "the photographer has guidelines. He's really big on palette integrity." She smiled at me in a way that tried to be warm and landed on condescending. "He asked for no uniforms in the pictures. They pull focus." She said it lightly, like a breeze. I felt it like a shove. "Who's wearing uniforms?" I asked. "Well," she said, pretending to think, "the kitchen." And her eyes flicked over my scrubs. "You know, we'll have robes for you to change into if you need them." "Robes," I repeated, though what I wanted to repeat was something less polite. Evan's throat moved. He looked at the ceiling like there might be an answer written up there. I didn't say yes to the robes. I didn't say no. Pastor Ruth would have been proud of me. Calm, collect, confirm, so I collected. The chart, the flow, the tone. When I left the office, I placed my thermos on the front desk to free my hands. The metal kissed the wood with a little tap, a sound I've started to hear as a tiny gavel. Not judgment, adjudication. The room goes on doing its room things. Laughter, clatter, someone asking for more sauce. But that tap reminds me I am present, not furniture. Out in the hallway, my phone buzzed. It was Diana from the hospital. She doesn't text much, not because she's cold, but because she uses words like a nurse uses tape. Only what's needed. No waste. "You okay?" she wrote. I told her I was fine, which meant, in our language, not yet. She sent a video unprompted. "You should see this," the message said. I thumbed the sound up just enough to hear Candace's voice, recorded in the patio alley behind the restaurant. Candace was talking to one of her bridesmaids, that breathy register people use when they're pretending a secret is a favor. I told Evan. She laughed. "I cannot have the bleach smell near my veil, okay? He thinks it's mean to say, but, like, come on." The bridesmaid laughed. Someone clinked a lighter. Candace added, softer, "We'll just manage her. Seating fixes a lot." I watched it twice. The second time I didn't feel hot. I felt clear. There's a difference. Heat wants to burst. Clarity makes lists. I found Evan by the sweet tea urn and asked him how the tux fitting went, because I am still his mother and he is still my boy. He lit up when he talked about the tailor taking in the jacket and how Marcus cried when he saw him in it. He didn't know that Diana's video was sitting in my phone like a document waiting for a signature. I didn't show it. Not then. Some truths you don't toss into the middle of a crowded room like a napkin. You lay them out on a table big enough to hold the people you love. Candace swept by with a tape measure, actually measuring the distance between centerpieces, as if an extra inch could break the magic spell. "Oh," she chirped when she saw me. One more quick thing. The florist can't work around strong fragrances. Could you maybe avoid the, products tomorrow? She made a vague circle near her nose, as if the problem lived on the air and not in her head. I work nights, I said. Clean is not a fragrance. She blinked, then laughed like I'd told a joke I didn't know I knew. You're funny, she declared, and went on counting forks. On my way out, I stopped at the wall of black and white photos of strangers who used to be customers and now felt like ancestors of the brand. I wondered about their mothers. I wondered who was told to sit near the kitchen and who pretended it was quieter there. In the parking lot, the Houston evening had softened into that purple blue that wants you to forgive a lot of things. I sat in my car, the thermos warm against my ribs, and wrote myself 3 lines in the Notes app. Don't confuse their comfort with your obligation. Document the decisions they make about you. The table you sit at is not your worth. I was still looking at those lines when my phone vibrated again. It was Marcus. Pit room. Off the record. The pit room is where the air tells the truth. It smells like oak and fat and long decisions. Marcus held the door for me with his elbow, the way men do when their hands are busy with something heavy inside their heads. He didn't start with small talk. He never does. We're tight, he said. Tighter than I told Evan. He picked up a rib and put it down again like it had turned into a report. Prices are climbing. Cash is crawling. Greg's been playing calendar tricks with suppliers, paying some early to get discounts, paying others late to float payroll. It works until it doesn't. I leaned against the cold metal table and listened. I've learned that when a man like Marcus chooses the word tight, it means someone already snapped a button and tucked it into their pocket so no one would see. He rubbed the back of his neck. He calls it creative prepayment, says it's common. It is absivens. Common and wise are different animals, I said. He looked at me sideways. You talk like someone who reads our books. I read everyone's books, I said, and I meant hospital inventory and church fundraisers, and my own stack of light bills. Numbers are just stories with their makeup off. What's your vendor mix on meat this quarter? He squinted. Mostly 2 big guys. The third is that family butcher on Harrisburg, good folks, but they can't carry the volume. Or they can, if you stop making them act like a big guy, I said. Let the chain account run pay on scan. Move the family butcher to a fixed weekly allocation they can plan around. Close the gap with a 4th supplier for spillover. You'll take a price bump in week 1 and breathe easier in week 4. He stared at me like I'd told him the smoker had feelings. Where'd you learn that? I unscrewed my thermos lid. That small click steadied me. Laundry and late-night community college, and a friend who taught me to look where the cash actually walks. He nodded slowly, then shook his head like he wasn't allowed to be impressed. Greg hates the family butcher. Says they send invoices like it's $1,998. Sometimes $1,998 is where integrity lives, I said. Do they count boxes the same way every week? Do they pick up the phone on Sundays? That's cash flow too. It's called sleep. It's Bagdadham. He snorted, a sound half laugh, half surrender. You ever think about consulting? Not the kind with glossy decks, the kind with calluses. I already do, I said. I just call it keeping people employed. We stood there listening to the pit hum. He told me about a distributor who wanted prepayment to secure capacity and a sauce vendor who'd quietly doubled price with a prettier label. I told him about pay-on-scan contracts I'd read through a fog of dryer heat and how the hospital cut waste by moving away from 12-ounce anything. We didn't solve it. We made a map of where the road wasn't. He reached for a clipboard, then hesitated. Greg says you should stay out of the finance lane, he said, picking careful words like they might break. Says it confuses the team. It confuses the team when the light comes on, I said, and it stays on if you don't fix the wiring. I took a drink from the thermos. The coffee was strong enough to remind me of the woman I keep promising to be. Let me build you a vendor schedule we can defend? 2 pages. No adjectives. He lifted a shoulder. Do it. Quietly. I can't fight a spreadsheet and a wedding at the same time. It should have felt like permission. It felt like the kind of favor a woman files under do not mistake this for respect. Still, I nodded. I'll take a crack in the door if it leads to daylight. Back in the hallway, Candace swept by with a tablet, trailing the scent of money, trying to smell like flowers. "We good?" she asked Marcus, not looking at me. "For now," he said. "For now," she echoed, and the way she said it made "now" sound like a leash. I set the thermos on the host stand to text Freddie. He has this way of answering like he's been driving alongside my thoughts in a second lane. "What's your read on pay on scan with a regional chain?" I typed. Before my thumb left the screen, my phone buzzed with his reply. "Depends who's holding the note," he wrote. "Also heads up. Heard a rumor King's debt package is about to hit the secondary. Small tranche, ugly terms, the kind of thing you like because it's honest about being ugly." I stared at the message while the dining room clattered and laughed around me. If the debt moved, the story would change hands, and whoever bought it would get to write the next chapter. I tightened the cap on my thermos until it clicked. "Tell me when it lists," I texted back. "And send me the paperwork you'd make me sign if I were foolish enough to touch it." Freddie warned me 3 times before he sent the forms. "This isn't charity," he said. "It's paper with teeth. If you touch it, you follow the rules and you keep your hands clean." I told him I understood. He didn't believe me until I read every line out loud like a bedtime story for grown-ups who don't sleep unless the commas are in the right place. The tranche was small, ugly interest, honest disclosures, secured against inventory and receivables, not the kind of thing people brag about on a golf course. The kind of thing that sits in a filing cabinet quietly doing its job while everyone in the dining room argues over sauce. I wired what I could afford without shaking my life loose, signed where the arrows told me to sign, and waited for the email that would change the angle of my chair in every room I walked into. It came on a Tuesday at 6:42 a.m. After a night so hot the dryers clicked like cicadas. Assignment executed. 2 words that felt like a door unlatched somewhere I couldn't see. Freddie called 5 minutes later, voice low like we were in church. "You're in," he said. "A sliver, but a sliver with rights. Don't swing it around. Use it like a level." That afternoon, Marcus asked me to sit in on a meeting with suppliers. "Just listen," he said. "And if you say anything, say it like you expect to be interrupted." I smiled, because that's the only way I've learned to talk in rooms where people mistake gentleness for consent. We gathered in the back office where the AC tries its best, and the blinds always look tired. 2 reps from the big distributors, the family butcher in his good shirt, Marcus with a folder of tabbed papers, Greg with an iPad and that patient face men wear when they plan to ignore women. I took a seat by the file cabinet. No one offered me water. Greg started with a speech about seasonal pressures and capacity constraints, the kind of phrases that push numbers around like peas on a plate. He thanked everyone for their partnership and outlined a plan I recognize now as a stall: pay a little here, promise a little there, bet payroll on the kindness of strangers. When he finished, the room felt sticky. The family butcher cleared his throat. "We can't float you 2 weeks anymore," he said softly. "Not with beef where it is." Greg smiled like a dentist. "Of course, Gary. We respect your position. Perhaps we can evaluate volume tiers in Q4. Marcus shifted in his chair. He caught my eye for half a second. It was enough. I unscrewed my thermos lid. That quiet click landed in the room like a pin on a map. "Gary," I said, "what if we block you at a fixed weekly order you can plan staff around and tie payment to receipt instead of invoice? You get certainty. King's gets predictability." Both reps looked at me like I'd stepped out of the wallpaper. Greg tilted his head. "And you are?" "Lorraine King," I said. "I help at the hospital nights. I've also reviewed some of the company's obligations." He laughed, the short kind that's really about control. "With respect, Miss King, this is a finance conversation." "I know," I said, still calm. "That's why I'm here." He blinked. "On whose authority?" I set my thermos next to Marcus's folder and slid the copy Freddie told me to carry for moments exactly like this. "On this," I said. "I hold a creditor stake, small but secured. I'm not here to grandstand. I'm here to protect a business that feeds a lot of families, including mine." The room went very still. One of the distributor reps adjusted his tie. Gary looked at me like someone had finally spoken his language. Marcus's mouth opened and closed once, then curved into the kind of half-grin men use when a hidden door they've walked past for years suddenly opens. Greg's face did a thing surprise, then calculation, then a smile that tried to recover the ground. Well, he said too brightly, we value all stakeholders' input. Perhaps we can circle back to structure after we— Let's not circle, I said, gentle but not giving an inch. Let's anchor. Pay on scan for chain deliveries. Fixed weekly for Harrisburg meats. Add a fourth supplier for overflow so you stop torturing your own margins with panic buys. And publish the receiving logs so no one is punished for being the only honest link in the chain. Marcus tapped the folder with one finger, a sound like yes. The distributor reps stopped fidgeting. Gary exhaled, the kind of breath men hold when they've been asked to perform generosity they can't afford. For the first time in a long time, the room felt possible. Greg tried one more smile. We can certainly explore, he said, but we should be careful about letting non-finance personnel drive these conversations. It can confuse the team. Confusion comes from missing numbers, I said. Clarity is a kindness. Out in the hallway afterward, Evan caught up to me, cheeks pink, tie askew. Mom, he whispered, glancing toward the office. What did you just show them? Paper, I said. The same kind that decides who eats when the kitchen gets quiet. He searched my face for something approval, apology, a place to stand that didn't make him pick a side. Candace is going to think you're trying to steal the spotlight. I'm trying to keep the lights on, I said. He nodded like he believed me, and also like he was afraid to believe me. That's okay. Faith comes in teaspoons. On my way to the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't know. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text landed from a line that had messaged me once before, late at night, with numbers dressed as help. We should talk, it read. There's a process for removing disruptive stakeholders before they cause reputational harm. Candace texted me a link to a boutique that had more mirrors than dresses. Quick try-on? She wrote, with a heart that felt like a receipt. I said yes because sometimes you walk into a room you already know you'll walk out of, just to prove to yourself you can. The shopkeeper had that spa voice that makes you feel like you're about to apologize for breathing. Candace handed me 2 options in soft shades with names like Pearl Mist and Heirloom Sage. These will photograph beautifully, she said. And hey, tiny note, maybe we keep things simple tomorrow, no speeches. The officiant will cover everything. Tiny note, no speeches. A woman can die of tiny notes. I slid into the fabric and looked at myself. It wasn't the color that bothered me. It was the posture the dress demanded. Chin tucked, edges blurred, body turned into a background. Candace stood behind me like a stylist adjusting a display. There, she said. If we keep your hair smooth and maybe a touch of powder, the palette will be perfect. Perfect for who? I asked, and she laughed, surprised like a firework. For everyone, she said, which is a kind of no one. Back at the restaurant, the new seating chart was taped to the wall like a law. My name sat at the far edge with the church ladies and 2+1s nobody could place. Better acoustics, Candace said, passing behind me. And closer to the kitchen in case you need anything. I read those words the way you read a sign that says, authorized personnel only. If you're not meant to enter, they'll make sure the door is close enough to remind you. I didn't fight it in the hallway. I went home and called Pastor Ruth. She asked me to read what happened like a police report. Facts first, feelings after. When I finished, she was quiet for a breath that felt like a benediction. Write your boundary, she said. Plain language. No threats. Tell them what you will and will not fund. Fund? I said, and the word felt new in my mouth. You are not an ornament, she said gently. You are a woman who buys groceries and pays bills. Don't spend a dime on disrespect. So I wrote the email and read it out loud until the words held still. Candace, Evan, I'm glad to celebrate your marriage. I won't participate in or finance any event where I'm managed, hidden, or mocked. If tomorrow is for family, I'll be there as family. If tomorrow is for pictures, I'm happy to bow out and see you Sunday for dinner. I'll respond to changes in seating and participation by the same rule. Calm, collect, confirm. With love, Lori. I hit send before I could decorate it. Then I tucked my phone under my pillow like I used to do with worry and slept without it for the first time in 3 days. At noon, Marcus called me to the office. He didn't sit, he paced. I need you to see this. He pushed a folder across the desk. Receipts, purchase orders, handwritten delivery tallies from the Harrisburg butcher. Line by line, the numbers said what people had been too polite to say out loud. Greg had been adjusting inputs and counting on no one to notice the price of loyalty creeping up in the night. Freddie met me at my car and spread the papers across the hood like a picnic we weren't enjoying. He moved his finger down the columns and made soft, unhappy sounds. "Variance this clean doesn't happen by accident," he said. "He's building his own bonus on the back of your margin." He took the folder home and promised me a one-page summary. Even the board's most stubborn uncle could understand. Candace called while we worked. "Did you get my note about hair and makeup?" she asked, bright and breathless. "The artist can't work around strong scents." "I'm clean," I said. "That's not what She caught herself. "You know what I mean." "I do," I said, and let the silence land between us. "It didn't break." She did. "Fine," she said, dropping the sugar. "Just please don't make a scene tomorrow. The videographer has a timeline." "I don't make scenes," I said. "I make decisions." By late afternoon, the restaurant had that charged feeling rooms get before the weather changes. I walked past the host stand and saw my name move to a different table with a sticky note that read, "Pending. Progress by Post-it. What a world." I was pouring tea when I heard Evan's voice from the back hallway, low and tight. I followed the sound until the words separated themselves from the hum. "No, don't pitch it like poverty porn," he was saying. "She's my mother." A pause, then Candace, sharper than I'd ever heard. "It's a human interest angle, Evan. From bleach to banquet, people eat that up. We need goodwill after the supplier story. If we give the Chronicle a clean narrative, the other stuff won't land." "The other stuff?" he asked, and my stomach turned, because the only other stuff that should matter at a wedding is vows. Candace lowered her voice. "You haven't seen what Greg sent me." "He sent you what?" Evan's shoes scuffed against the tile, as if he'd rocked back on his heels. I stepped away from the wall and pretended I needed more sugar. My hands didn't shake. The thermos lid clicked shut, a neat, decisive sound. When I looked up, the foyer lights flashed once as the photographer tested his strobe. For a second, the room went white, and everyone's edges showed. Buffalo Bayou looks prettier at dusk than it has any right to. The water isn't clean, not really, but when the light hits it sideways, the surface pretends it is. I sat on the low concrete wall with my blue thermos beside me and let the humid air press close like an honest friend. It had been a day full of small cuts, tiny notes, palette integrity, better acoustics near the kitchen, and I could feel myself wanting to do the thing I've done most of my life, shrink to fit the room. I checked myself like a nurse checks a pulse. Calm? Not yet. Collect? Working on it. Confirm? Coming. There's a lie I've told myself for 30 years, and it sounds like wisdom when I whisper it right. If you stay quiet, you stay safe. It feels true because quiet kept food on the table, kept Evan sleeping through nights when I didn't, kept me employed while bosses came and went like weather reports. But sitting by the water, I realized quiet hadn't kept me safe. It had kept me small. It had partnered with people who preferred me easy to move. I don't owe anyone that version of me anymore. I opened the thermos. The lid popped with that soft click I hear down to my ribs. The coffee had cooled, but it still tasted like somebody's better morning. I took a slow sip and let my breath match it. I thought about my husband, the way he'd tell me, "We don't get to choose our storms, Lori, but we do choose where we stand." And I thought about Evan's face when he tries to be the bridge, how a bridge breaks when the river rises, if nothing anchors it on either side. Across the water, runners passed in little squads of neon. A dog tugged at a leash like the world was calling it by name. My phone sat heavy in my pocket, so I took it out, scrolled past the seat charts and the boutique texts and the CFO's tidy threats, and opened a blank note. I wrote it like a prayer I could recite when the room got loud. Do not fund disrespect. Do not confuse their comfort with your duty. Do not make yourself smaller so they can feel larger. I read it 3 times. Then I copied it into a new email, added names to the salutation, and let my hands do the work my fear tried to stop. Candace, Evan, I'm glad to celebrate your marriage. I won't participate in or finance any event where I'm managed, hidden, or mocked. If tomorrow is for family, I'll be there as family. If it's for pictures, I'll bow out and hug you Sunday over brisket. I'll respond to changes in seating and participation by the same rule: calm, collect, confirm. With love. Mom, Lori. I stared at the word love. It didn't look wrong there. Boundaries aren't the opposite of love. They're the spine that lets love stand up straight. I hit send before I softened it, because softening has cost me too much. My phone buzzed almost at once. Not Candace. Evan. Mom? He said, all air. Did you mean to send that? Yes, I said. I meant it. He stopped. I could hear the hallway around him, ice machine, music bleeding under a door, somebody laughing in the middle distance. Candace is spiraling. She says you're drawing lines. I am, I said. I'm also showing up. Those are not opposites. He was quiet long enough I thought the call had dropped. I hate conflict, Mom. His voice was small and honest. I hate it like fire. I want everyone to be smiling. I know, I said. But smiling isn't the same as safe. Or true. He exhaled into the receiver. Candace sent press emails, he blurted, like a confession that had been knocking at his teeth. Human interest, it's supposed to help. I told her not to make you a storyline. Thank you, I said. And if she wants a clean narrative, she can start with clean behavior. That's not how she'd say it. I know, I said. But you can. He didn't answer that. Instead, he asked a different question, the one under all the others. Are you mad at me? I'm disappointed, I said, because mothers owe their sons the real words. You watched me get moved to the kitchen door and called it logistics. That hurt. But I also see you trying to choose us without setting the room on fire. Here's the thing, baby. Sometimes the only way not to burn is to step away from the matchbook. A long breath. What do you want me to do? Stand with the truth, I said. Not against Candace, not against me. With the truth. If someone asks you to hide me, say no. If someone jokes, don't laugh. If someone tries to use me as content, tell them I'm a person, not a pitch. You don't have to fight. You have to stop cooperating. Fine. He made a sound I've only heard a few times, once when he broke his arm falling out of a tree, once when he said his first grief out loud. Okay, he said. I can do that. Then, softer. I'm sorry. I know, I said. I'm listening. We hung up because there wasn't anything useful left to say on a phone. I let the quiet come back, not as a muzzle but as a porch to sit on. The sun slid lower, and the dent in my thermos caught the light. It looked like a flaw until the glow got inside it. Then it looked like a place something had been carried and survived. On the way back to my car, I passed two teenagers practicing choreography in the park grass. They were terrible and full-hearted, and laughing so hard at their own mistakes I wanted to clap. Somewhere between the third and fourth spin, one of them yelled, "Do it again, but mean it." I don't think life sends clearer instructions than that. My phone buzzed once more, Pastor Ruth this time. Got a message from a volunteer who works back door at the restaurant. Her text read, "Camera near the alley picked up something last night you'll want to see. When can you stop by?" The rehearsal was supposed to be practice. It felt like a trial. The room had that pre-storm electricity napkins lined up like jurors, everyone speaking too brightly because their throats knew better. Marcus texted me to come early. When I walked into the small conference room off the kitchen, he was already there with two board members I'd only seen at Christmas and bank meetings. Freddie stood against the wall with his hands in his pockets, like a man trying to keep from clapping at a funeral. "Show us," Marcus said, voice low. Freddie spread the packet on the table and let the numbers speak first. Line items from the Harrisburg butcher, distributor invoices with dates that moved like they were playing hopscotch, receiving logs that didn't match what the freezers swore they'd swallowed. In the middle of every column there was a little lien, the kind accountants call variance and cooks call theft of sleep. On page 3, he laid down the emails polite on their face, ugly in their arrangement where Greg promised preferred placement to a supplier who'd sweetened his weekends. It wasn't a smoking gun. It was a smoker left open all night so the heat escaped, and everyone pretended the brisket didn't notice. "Tell me I'm wrong," Freddie said, almost tender. No one did. Marcus pressed his thumb into the edge of the paper until the ridge went white. One board member cleared his throat and started to say context, then stopped when he caught the look on my face, the one I inherited from a man who used to weld in August without complaining because the metal didn't care. Candace arrived on a gust of perfume and purpose. She saw me first, then the documents, then the men who were trying and failing to look like this was a polite conversation about linens. "What is this? What is this?" she asked. It came out like a headline, "Bride intercepts ambush." She didn't pick up a page, she picked up a posture. If you're going to blow up our rehearsal with business drama, at least have the decency to do it somewhere the photographer can't hear you. It is a fainted balk. "It's not drama," I said. "It's operations. It's family," she snapped, as if the words were opposite. She turned to Marcus. "Why is she here?" "Because I asked," he said. She laughed, short and pretty. "Of course you did." Then she aimed that smile at me like a light you could tan under or burn. "You just can't help it, can you? Making everything about you. It's cruel, Lori. You're breaking this family in half 2 hours before we practice vows." "I'm mending what's torn," I said, and I brought a needle and thread that don't lie. Evan came in behind her, breathless and already tired. He saw the papers. He saw my hands. He looked at Candace the way boys look at bright things they think they're supposed to follow. Then, God bless him, he looked at me. Whatever he saw there aligned a small compass inside him. He stepped between us. "Enough," he said, and the word wasn't loud. It was true. "Mom sent the numbers because she cares if the people in this building get paid. This isn't sabotage." Candace's mouth tightened. "You're taking her side?" "I'm taking the truth's side," he said. His voice shook, but it stood up. "I love you, and I love my mother. But if you ask me to choose between a clean kitchen and a pretty picture, I'm going with clean." He was a panned. For a second, all I heard was the clink of ice settling in glasses outside the door. Then the board chair, a man whose most radical act to date had been switching from sweet to unsweet tea, cleared his throat. "Greg needs to step back while we review," he said, as if the sentence had been waiting in him for a year. "Effective now. Marcus, get Freddie what he needs to stabilize purchasing." He looked at me, not through me. "Miss King, thank you for this." The pause was awkward and sincere. We forgot we were supposed to be stewards, not hosts. Candace didn't cry. She hardened. "Fine," she said. "Destroy your own week. But you don't get to sit front row tomorrow and pretend you're the matriarch of this show." There it was, the small knife hidden in the bouquet. I didn't flinch. I reached into my bag, took out the thermos, and poured coffee into the cap cup. I handed it to Evan like a mother hands a kid a baton. "Drink," I said quietly. "You'll need the sugar." He took it with both hands like a pledge. Marcus watched the exchange, then put his palm flat on the packet, decision rolling through his shoulders. He looked at me in that way men do when they're done pretending the ground beneath them isn't sloped. "Tomorrow," he said, "you stand with the family. Everyone for matter." Candace went very still, and for a second I saw the girl under the armor, afraid of smallness, the way some people are afraid of snakes. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then turned on her heel and left a wake of perfume that didn't get anywhere it wanted to go. The rehearsal stumbled forward, half-hearted and half an hour late. People misread lines and laughed too loudly and said it was the heat. I stood near the back door with Marcus while he called a butcher and a distributor and said words like interim and audit and make it right. Every so often someone would hand me a new seating chart like a peace offering. My name moved around the room as if it were looking for a place to land. I let it. I knew where I was going to be. When the pastor finally called for a run-through of the vows, Evan turned and met my eyes across the rows. He touched his chest with 2 fingers and then pointed them at me, our old sign from when he was small and needed to know he had me, even from a stage or a field. I returned it. 2 fingers, my heart to his, a promise no chart could relocate. On my way out, Marcus caught my elbow. "One more thing," he said, voice softened by relief and grief braided together. "Don't be late tomorrow. The photographer needs to get the family shot before the light gets mean." He tried for a smile and almost found one. "You'll be in it." By morning, I had the kind of sleep that feels like a receipt. Paid for, itemized, no returns. Pastor Ruth's volunteer met me in the church office with a flash drive in a plastic sandwich bag and the careful look of someone who knows evidence when she holds it. "Backdoor camera," she said. "Timestamps clean." We plugged it in, grainy black and white. The alley behind the restaurant, a rectangle of light from the patio. At 10:47 p.m., Greg stepped into the frame with a baseball cap, glanced at the door like guilt has a neck, and handed a small envelope to a man in a courier shirt who wasn't one of ours. They spoke for less than a minute. The courier took the envelope. Greg took a phone call and turned his face so full to the lens I could count pores. "Bless his angles," Pastor Ruth said. Freddie joined us with his laptop and the kind of excitement he saves for clean trails. He pulled up the Chronicle's draft link. The reporter had emailed a courtesy preview to Candace's PR account because reporters still believe in manners on slow news days. Freddie dragged the video's timestamp next to the article's metadata like two puzzle pieces. "Upload began at 11:02 from a burner registered this morning," he said. "Same tower Greg used to send Evan a spreadsheet last week. See the cell ping radius?" The burner paid with a prepaid Visa bought at the Chevron 3 blocks from Greg's condo. "Security footage there will show the buyer. We're not guessing, we're stacking." The draft headline was the kind that tastes sweet and rots your teeth. From bleach to banquet, bride's humble mother becomes human interest darling. It read like a lullaby for people who like their poor tidy. I wish I could tell you I felt triumph. Mostly I felt tired of the ways people use stories like ladders. Freddie closed the laptop and looked at me. "You were right," he said, "but we still have to decide what right does." We carried the packet to Marcus. He didn't blink, just exhaled the long breath of a man who'd been holding up a ceiling by himself. The board chair called the lawyer. Words like interim suspension and forensic review pinned themselves to the day like name tags no one wanted to wear. Candace found me in the hallway before the rehearsal, eyes bright with the kind of shine that can be either tears or rage depending on how you tilt it. "Greg says this is all being twisted," she started, "too fast. He says you're weaponizing misunderstandings. He sent me documents to help craft a narrative because we need positive coverage after what?" I asked. She stalled, then tried a different lane. "Look, maybe I did call the Chronicle. People love a redemption piece. It would have helped the brand." "The brand," I said, keeping my voice even, "is people getting paid and fed." Her chin lifted. "You think I'm a villain?" "I'm not. I grew up couponing with my mom and saying no to field trips. I can't go back." "I won't." I felt something shift tiny, like a thread loosening inside a knot. Fear of scarcity isn't evil, it's loud. But fear doesn't deputize anyone to make other people small. "Being afraid of broke," I said, "doesn't give you a license to break other people." She flinched, and for a second I saw her as a kid in a dress that pinched. "Did I leak it?" she asked, almost whispering, like maybe confession would buy her a smaller sentence. "No," I said. "Greg did. He used you as cover. That still leaves your choices on the table." She looked past me toward the doorway as if air could save her. "I can fix it," she said. "Spin it clean." "Don't spin," I said. "Stop." I carried my thermos into the small rehearsal room and set it in the middle of the table, one solid object in a day full of moving parts. Marcus, the board chair, two cousins who'd suddenly learned how to say fiduciary, they all took seats. The lawyer joined by speakerphone. We moved through the facts like careful movers, slow, back straight, nothing dropped. Greg arrived late with a smile you could slice brisket on. He went straight to the sound cart and started fiddling with the wireless mics, talking loudly about interference and ceremony flow, like the room were his stagehand. "We'll need to cut ambient during family remarks," he announced, "so we don't pick up side commentary." "Step away from the board, Greg," Marcus said, not unkindly. "You're done touching things today." Greg laughed as if we were all dear friends in a farce. "Marcus, be serious." "I am," Marcus said. The chair repeated it into the phone so the lawyer could hear the spine in it. Freddie slid the printouts across the table. Greg didn't pick them up. He looked at me instead, like maybe he could shame me back into the corner I'd kept warm for years. "Miss King," he said smoothly, "this is a wedding, a time for grace." "Grace and truth are not enemies," I said, "but I've learned grace without truth is just delay." He turned to Candace, reaching for an ally. "This is what happens when we let non-finance people." "Stop," she said, voice small but decisive. "Just stop." For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then the board chair cleared his throat and read the sentence the lawyer had just texted over. Greg's title came off his name like a pin from a lapel. Security didn't have to escort him. He walked out dressed in his own certainty, which finally didn't fit. After he left, the quiet rearranged itself. Candace stared at the papers as if they were a foreign menu. "I didn't know," she said. "I should have." "You should have wanted to," I said, and I didn't say it to hurt her. I said it because wanting is the hinge that turns a person toward or away from better. I gathered the documents and put my thermos back in my bag. "There's coffee in the hall," I told the room, because hospitality is a habit even when you're tired. We filed toward the doorway, people resuming the ordinary work of standing where they were supposed to stand. That's when a sound cut across the hum, a squeal of tires in the lot, urgent and close. Someone shouted. The florist dropped a bucket of eucalyptus, and the scent rose like a green alarm. Morning came in clean, ordinary light, the kind that makes yesterday's drama look like something you dreamed. I brewed coffee, rinsed my blue thermos like a ritual, and told myself the same thing. I tell sheets coming out of the washer, we're not done until we're dry. At the restaurant, they were already lacing chairs with ribbon like forgiveness. Marcus met me by the back door with eyes that had slept a little and aged a lot. "Before we start," he said, "I need to put something on the table I should have put there months ago." He didn't wait for privacy. He didn't try to soften it. "You warned me about the supplier creep in the spring." I shrugged because pride is cheaper than audits until it isn't. "That's on me." There it was, the second twist I didn't expect but recognized. Not every wound is a villain. Some are a mirror. He held my gaze like a man holding his own throat above water. "We'll make it right," he said. "But the wrong didn't begin with Greg." "Thank you," I said, "because accountability is a language, and you answer it in the same tongue." He nodded toward the office. "Also the supplier who sweetened weekends for Greg? He had a friend inside receiving. It's not one rotten plank, it's a rotten junction. We're tearing it up." "Then lay the new boards straight," I said. "No more pretty labels hiding bad math." By noon, the board had signed interim controls so short and clear they could fit on a church fan. Freddie stood with a legal pad like a boy drafted into varsity, grinning in a way that made me forgive the years he'd spent learning things the hard way. "We'll publish receiving logs," he said. "Switch chain deliveries to pay on scan, fix the family butcher at a weekly allocation, and rotate the overflow," Marcus added. "And no one touches the mic cart unless they're marrying or being married." Outside, the sky practiced being August bright and a little mean. Guests came in wearing their nicest versions of themselves. I took my seat near the aisle because that's what the new chart said. Then Evan walked over holding two things, the program and his nerve. "Mom," he said, voice steady in that way people get when they've decided to be a person. "I moved you." He swallowed. "Front row. With me." I looked at Candace before I answered. She was watching, shoulders squared like someone who'd rehearsed for a different scene and was trying to learn the new lines in real time. When our eyes met, she crossed the space between us with a carefulness that made the room quieter. "I have something to say," she told me, not asking permission but asking for audience. "I didn't respect you. I called reporters when I should have called my own conscience. I told myself it was for the brand, but it was for me." She took a breath. "I'm sorry. People say apologies are for the apologizer. I think they're for the room. You could feel this one make space." "Thank you," I said. "Keep going." She nodded, like that was the assignment she'd been waiting for. "I'll earn the seat next to you," she said. "Not with flowers. With decisions." "Good," I said. "That currency spends. It's no price." When we lined up for the family photo, the photographer asked me to tilt my chin. I tilted it however I wanted. Evan slid his arm around my shoulders in a way that still fits, even though he's taller, and whispered, "I'm proud of you." I wanted to tell him I am proud of him for picking truth over temperature, but the music started, and the room stood. The ceremony was short, because the best ones are. Vows about weathering and choosing, A reading about love that doesn't keep a ledger but does keep receipts. When the pastor invited family remarks, my name wasn't called because I hadn't asked for it to be. But before the benediction, Marcus stepped forward anyway. "On behalf of the people who've been fed by this place and the people who feed it," he said, "I need to name someone we've walked past while she was holding the building up from the corner." He gestured toward me with the simple respect of a man handing over a plank. "Lorraine King, thank you. Not for the drama you avoided, for the discipline you kept." There was polite applause that turned into something more, because a truth had been said out loud and didn't die of it. Afterward, people hugged me in that way. Southerners hug when they're admitting they misjudged you and are trying to fold that into the embrace. The church ladies told me my dress was nice and real. I told them thank you and meant it and didn't move my seat. Later, in a patch of shade, I handed Evan a small card I'd written in block letters. "For when your memory gets crowded," I said. Boundary card. We love through actions. We don't finance disrespect. If you forget, we pause, put it in writing, and begin again. He read it like a man committing to a recipe he wanted to pass down. "I'll keep it in my wallet," he said, "right next to the ring receipt, so I don't lose either." Candace approached us with 2 cups of tea and a face that looked less lacquered than yesterday. "I called the reporter," she said. "I killed the piece. If a story about your mother ever runs, it won't be mine to tell." She hesitated. "If you'll have me, I want to help fix what I helped fog up. The foundation of this family, the controls at the business, the difference between a narrative and the truth." "Start by paying the florist on time," I said, and she laughed, and it sounded human. At dusk, the photographer gathered us for one last shot before the light got mean. Evan squeezed my hand. Candace placed her palm over my other one, tentative, but there. I lifted my thermos, took a small sip, and felt the heat bloom up through my chest, one clean line from the work I've done to the woman I get to be. Then I tightened the cap until it clicked. Not a period. A promise. People think dignity is a dress you borrow for special occasions. It isn't. It's a daily bill you pay in decisions. I don't fund disrespect. I fund responsibility. And if you need a rule to carry in your pocket, here's the one I wrote for myself and now for you. Respect without paperwork is a performance. Love with a spine is a practice. Here's the truth this story keeps circling. Love needs a spine, and boundaries are how it stands. Or as Lori puts it, I don't finance disrespect, I finance responsibility. When rooms get loud or pretty, choose what's clean over what's photogenic. A boundary isn't a wall. It's a door that only opens when you're present. Start small and practical. Write your terms, say them calmly, and let your paperwork carry the weight. That soft click like the lid of a blue thermos can be your cue to steady yourself before you speak. Try these this week. Write a 3-line boundary card and keep it in your wallet. We love through actions. We don't finance disrespect. If we forget, we pause and put it in writing. Use 3. Calm. Collect. Confirm when pressure shows up. Follow up by email so the truth has a trail. Start a family incident log. 1 page. Date, time, who, what was said, done, witnesses, evidence, next step. Practice 1 sentence you'll use next time. I'm happy to help when we treat each other with respect, otherwise I'll step back. Find 1 ally, pastor, counselor, trusted friend, who will rehearse scripts with you and remind you to choose clean procedures over messy performance. This is not legal advice. If this resonated, drop 1 line you'll say to yourself on a shaky day in the comments. Then download the free 1-page family boundary and incident log in the description to put structure behind your courage. Subscribe if you want more stories where dignity beats drama and paper beats noise. May you sleep tonight on boundaries you chose and wake up to the quiet strength that follows.